You have never been to the deepest place on Earth. Almost no one has. Fewer than 30 people in all of human history have touched the bottom of the ocean's deepest point. Compare that to space. More than 600 people have left the atmosphere. You are, statistically, more likely to become an astronaut than to ever stand where the ocean floor drops to its absolute lowest. That place has a name. Challenger Deep. It sits in the Mariana Trench in the Western Pacific, and the most precise measurement ever taken, from a 2020 survey using sound pulses corrected for temperature, salinity, and pressure, puts its depth at 10,935 meters below sea level. Give or take 6 meters. To understand what that number actually means, forget the ocean for a second. Picture Mount Everest, the tallest point on land, at 8,849 meters. Now, imagine tearing it out of the ground and dropping it into Challenger Deep. The peak, the very tip that climbers die trying to reach, would still sit more than 2 kilometers underwater. Here's where it gets strange. We found this place using scrap iron. In 1875, a British survey ship called HMS Challenger dropped a weighted rope over the side and measured 8,184 meters before it stopped paying outline. That was already deeper than anyone expected. In 1951, a second ship, also named Challenger, came back with better tools and recorded 10,900 meters. This time using sound echoes bounced off the seafloor. The trench was named after that ship. Not after a person, after scrap iron and sonar pings, thrown into the dark to see how long it took to hit bottom. Humans didn't actually go there themselves until 1960. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh climbed into a steel sphere called the Trieste and spent 5 hours sinking through total darkness. When they reached the bottom, the outer window had cracked from the pressure. They stayed 20 minutes, saw a flatfish through the glass, and came back up. Then nobody returned for 52 years. 52 years. During that gap, 12 different men walked on the moon. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron piloted a solo submersible back down, alone, in a vertical steel tube barely wider than his shoulders. And here's the number that should bother you. Even after his dive and several more after it, only somewhere between 27 and 40 human beings have ever reached the bottom of Challenger Deep. Ever. In all of history. Meanwhile, the International Space Station orbits 408 kilometers above your head, right now, with people living on it continuously since the year 2000. So ask yourself the obvious question. Why does a hole in the ocean, barely 11 kilometers deep, remain more untouched than a metal station floating in the vacuum of space? Part of the answer is pressure. At the bottom of Challenger Deep, the water pushes down with a force equivalent to the weight of about 100 elephants pressing on a single person. Any imperfection in a submersible's hull, a hairline crack, a bad weld, doesn't leak. It implodes instantly without warning. Space, by comparison, is almost gentle. A vacuum has nothing pushing on you. Engineers can build large, thin-walled structures that would be crushed like a soda can at the bottom of the sea. And here's what's worse. It's not just pressure. It's absolute dark. No sunlight has ever reached that depth. Not once. Not for a billionth of a second since the trench formed. Anything living down there generates its own light or doesn't need any at all. Then, in 2020, something happened that connects both halves of this story directly. A woman named Kathy Sullivan descended to Challenger Deep in a submersible. Decades earlier, she had already done something else entirely. She was the first American woman to walk in space, floating outside a shuttle in 1984. With that single dive to the ocean floor, she became the first human being to do both, to leave the atmosphere and to touch the deepest point on the planet. After she surfaced, her team arranged a call between her ship and the astronauts currently aboard the International Space Station. So, 2 groups of explorers, one nearly 11 kilometers down and one 408 kilometers up, could compare notes on what it's like to live somewhere the human body was never built for. Only one person in history has stood in both places. Not because the ocean is farther away. It's the opposite. It's closer than space by a huge margin. We just built our entire culture of exploration pointing upward. Think about how many space documentaries you've watched compared to deep ocean ones. How many kids dream of being an astronaut compared to a submersible pilot? We named rockets, we memorized astronauts, we put flags on the moon. The deepest place on our own planet stayed nameless for millennia, then got named after a ship, not a person, because barely anyone was there to name it after themselves. Maybe it's because looking up feels hopeful and looking down feels like disappearing. Space is depicted as light, stars, a destination. The deep ocean is depicted as crushing, silent, and absolutely lightless. The closest thing on Earth to non-existence. But it's still down there. Right now, while you're watching this, that trench is exactly as deep, exactly as dark, and exactly as unexplored as it was 100 years ago. Fewer people have stood at the bottom of it than have orbited the planet in the last 12 months alone. We didn't conquer Earth. We conquered the parts of it that looked like an invitation. The rest is still waiting, 11 kilometers straight down, closer to you right now than most of the people who have ever seen it.